Hi, everyone. I'm Michelle with the Sleep Coach School, and I'm back for another open class. And today I am joined by Coach Alina. How are you doing?
Great. Thank you, Michelle, for inviting.
Of course, thanks for coming. I always love doing these open classes with you, and it's also a great chance for us to catch up. So I'm going to keep roping you in to more and more. So we've got 3 questions today. So let's get started. Okay. Our first question is from Tom, and he says, after reading Set It and Forget It, I decided to set a sleep pressure of 17 hours and a sleep window of 7 hours so as to maintain a regular circadian rhythm. I have given up all sleep efforts and try to befriend wakefulness at night as best I can. Unfortunately, nights are still consistently poor, and my days are often of low quality as a result. My question relates to my struggle to keep awake during the day after a poor night's sleep. I am exceedingly tired. I try to read and I begin to immediately fall asleep. I exercise, sit down to rest, I begin to doze off. My doctor checked for underlying issues but found none. If I give in to my daytime tiredness by napping, as many of my friends do because we're all retired, we're in our 70s, I know I will interrupt my circadian rhythm and probably make my nights even worse. Do you have any suggestions for me? Okay. So thanks for sending in this question, Tom. This is a common question overall about napping. Can we nap? Is it okay? And so, Tom, first and foremost, I want to start by kind of giving you permission to take a nap. It's okay. Oftentimes, when we start to have insomnia, we get really scared about if we can ever take a nap again, or if it's going to ruin our circadian rhythm, if it's going to destroy our sleep at night if we do so. And oftentimes, just like with insomnia as a whole, the way we are thinking about taking the nap ends up being so much more impactful than whether or not we actually nap. And so, what do I mean by this? Tom, for example, if you were to take a nap in the afternoon, and the moment you were to wake up, all of a sudden you start to feel panicked and you start to say to yourself, oh my gosh, I shouldn't have napped. I'm going to ruin the night. I'm going to be up all night because I napped. This was really horrible. I did something bad. Then, of course, that's going to create a lot of kind of inner stress and tension that you're likely to carry into the night with you. And that, as a result, is going to create a lot of issues with being able to sleep at night because you're increasing all of the hyperarousal and the stress around the fact that you napped, as opposed to somebody who wakes up from a nap, kind of stretches and feels great and kind of views that nap as self-care and like as something like this luxurious thing they were able to do for themselves that day without any worry about, if it's going to impact the night or not. And, because they're not putting a lot of thought or concern into it, it doesn't tend to impact their night a whole lot. And so, with that said, kind of reconsider the idea of napping and know that how you think about it and how you're mentally and emotionally responding to the fact that you napped is actually going to have a bigger impact than the nap itself. And I know you have some issues with circadian rhythm. And I know you mentioned, having a very specific sleep window. And if that's helpful for you right now, then that's okay. But I do want to go back to the idea that our insomnia is really not caused by us lacking sleep drive. And Tom, this sounds like something you are experiencing and realizing during the day as you are noticing how much your body actually does want to fall asleep. So you're not actually lacking a lot of sleep drive. It's that higher level of hyperarousal, which is, that heightened state of alertness that is preventing sleep at night, as opposed to you not having adequate sleep drive. And so often when we don't know this, we think that the way to overcome insomnia is to continue to kind of really constrict our sleep and to continue to build this like immense amount of sleep drive so that we'll kind of force ourselves to sleep out of exhaustion essentially. And oftentimes that backfires in part because it implies that we can just start controlling our sleep if we start really playing with windows and constricting a lot, but also because fundamentally the issue is not about lacking sleep drive. It's about how hyperarousal, which is being driven by, our fear of not being able to sleep, and what will happen to that, what will happen to us if we don't sleep. So just wanted to share that concept and basically give you wide open permission to nap. And oftentimes you may even notice that, in the afternoon, usually it's mid-afternoon, at some point all of us start to feel like a little bit sleepy in the afternoon. It's a bit of like a hump that we all experience. And that's actually a natural part of our circadian rhythm, to have that sleepy, tired feeling. And it's actually because our body reaches a temperature maximum at that time and it makes us feel kind of tired. And a lot of people start to incorporate naps at that time, and they start to work that into their circadian rhythm and in their schedule. And I know many, many people who nap as part of their day and sleep very well at night. So it's not something to be really concerned about. If you are concerned, you can start by, taking maybe a 20 to 30-minute nap, and kind of ease in. But typically anything under 90 minutes is really okay. And it's really more about how we think about it and kind of taking that guilt and pressure away. So I know that's a lot, so I'll pause there. I want to pass it over to Coach Alina and see, like, what do you think about napping, and are you a napper? Is this something that?
I mean, first, I want to say that this giving yourself permission, I love this concept. I love the concept of this kind of allowing yourself to do something that you really want and not thinking about the, oh, how it will affect my sleep. Because in reality, it doesn't matter whether you do it or not. Sleep is still beyond our control. That's it. That's the bottom line. We cannot, like, it's such a rock solid truth that anything just crashes, like, any question we have, like, should I nap, should I not nap? And I really have very little to add to this, that the reason why in CBT-I, particularly, this idea that you shouldn't nap and like collect that sleep drive is so strong, is that, I mean, part of that is that, yes, sometimes in the beginning, when when you're scared, you don't know why you're not sleeping, and you're trying to catch up with sleep. Most probably, like the first step you do is just to create a lot of opportunity for yourself to sleep. So that's why people, like, they might not even feel like napping, but they force themselves to nap because they are catching up with those, with the sleep they didn't get. And this is not helpful. But it is not helpful, not because the nap is bad and everyone should avoid it, but because of the intention behind that nap. It doesn't matter the actual the activity. It's like all about intention. So if we now start, like, or if anyone who is listening to us right now is, like, currently trying to catch up with their sleep, and they think, like, oh, I should nap because then I will have enough of hours and so on, this might be problematic because there is this intention, there is this sleep effort. But when you are genuinely feel tired, you feel like sleepy, and the idea of having, like, taking a rest and just feeling better right in the moment is, why not to give that to yourself? That's exactly what you, Michelle, like, mentioned, that this is the act of self-care. It is not an attempt to force sleep. So I would say that really, the whether you take it a nap or not, it's when it comes from the place of self-care, it's always helpful direction. And when it comes from the place of this fear of losing sleep, that's usually what creates the problem in the first place. So that's the only thing. And there is one thing that I wanted to mention, is that you were mentioning that in the beginning that I tried to befriend wakefulness. Basically, you named all the concepts which are presented this, and here is the same idea. When we begin to make, like, even the best approach, we start using it as in a strategic way. Okay, I'm going to do this and I will see what happens with my sleep. So there's always sleep on the radar. There is always, like, part of us is like, okay, I'm befriending it, and then there's a part of the brain that's like, are you sleeping? Or
About that. Yeah.
yes. And when this happens, when there is no, like, when we don't, truly befriend wakefulness, we befriend wakefulness for maybe like 90% or 60% or something. That's not befriending wakefulness in the reality. And what in these situations, when you find it difficult to, feel, how to say it, like feel good about your night or whatever, like enjoy your night, when this kind of joy and this befriending doesn't come easy, like naturally, then my usual like approach to that is just not even like, don't have to force yourself, give yourself permission to not befriend it if it, and this will be honest, this will be like very genuine, and most importantly, it will remove the pressure. So and this is why, like, I would say any of our actions, when we do them, I mean, like when we make a decision to keep going this direction or change the direction, whichever decision comes with this kind of relief feeling of like, like when the pressure goes away from you, this is usually the right direction for you. So if you feel like, okay, befriending wakefulness is too much pressure for me, then just give yourself permission, just be with your, if you feel like annoyed or feel like, then be with that feeling. Just allow yourself to be annoyed, because you have full right to feel that. It's totally normal, like, and same with nap, like if you feel like like rationally you think that, yeah, I shouldn't like nap, it's wrong, but I'm falling asleep all the time, I feel constantly tired and so on, and this kind of like this decision brings you so much pressure. And if you think about it, okay, maybe I cannot, allow myself to nap, and if that decision comes with this feeling of relief, then that's usually the right direction. So like, always this path of least resistance, less pressure, is always the right one, in my opinion.
I love that. The path of least resistance. Yeah, it tends to always be the right path, but for some reason we like get addicted to resistance. We think that is
Yeah.
the way.
Yeah, it's very difficult to actually spot the moment when we apply resist, like, or we put pressure on ourselves, and that's totally like I was falling into that kind of trap when I felt like, yeah, I just need to do something that feels like natural, but there was still resistance, and I couldn't figure out where it was exactly. But yeah, but with time, it usually, like, I was coming to some like insight. Okay, this is where I'm pushing hard on myself, and usually when I remove that pressure, that's the moment when things start going like easier.
Yeah, that makes so much sense. And I'm curious, are you a napper just generally in your day-to-day
You
life?
know, before Insomnia, I was a napper, like occasional one. I was not like regularly, but when I, after lunch or something, that I felt like, yeah, I really want to lie down, I was doing that, and I'm still doing that. So
There you go.
yeah, I mean, I'm not a like regular napper because sometimes it doesn't make sense for me, but yeah, sometimes today I had a nap, so
When the mood strikes.
yes.
See, whereas I'm quite envious of nappers. I've never been a napper. I've never really been able to nap. So even well before insomnia, I wasn't really something I was really able to do. And occasionally during my insomnia recovery, actually, because when my hyperarousal started to go down and I started to have a lot more fatigue, I did get some good naps in at that point.
Mm,
And, oh, they were amazing. I remember
yeah.
how good they felt and thinking, "Oh gosh, like, is this what, like, nappers feel all the time?" I don't nap much anymore, but, I am envious of the nappers. I have a lot of nappers in my life, so I look around, I think, "Oh, that looks good." So Tom, overall, we're giving you full permission to take that nap and to remove any guilt or pressure that you have around it. And when in doubt, path of least resistance, I think, is always the way. All
Yeah.
right, let's move on to our next question. This one is from Joni. She says, I can fall asleep reasonably quickly when I take 25 milligrams of Seroquel, but if not, it takes a long time. My biggest issue for the last few years is I wake up once or a few times in a state that feels like I am not fully awake, but I am definitely not asleep. I know I am partly awake and I feel frustrated as I lay there, but I'm not able to get up, or I'm not able to be fully aware or even look at the clock. I have no idea how long this lasts. Does this have a name? At some point, I snap out of it, and if I go to the toilet, restart my sleep podcast, I can fall back asleep if it's before 4 or 5. But after that, I usually cannot manage to fall back asleep. I have felt I do not reach the deeper state of sleep and I actually stay in a lighter sleep where I feel semi-conscious for most of the night. Now, this seems to have been replaced by periods of feeling half awake. I feel tired all day as soon as I get up. I can barely function. It's been years like this. I have a toddler and I'm a sole parent at home, and he wakes up in the night frequently too, so I have to attend to him. I think I have severe anxiety as well, which is contributing. So good question. Thank you for sending this in. So I want to kind of start off by passing this question over to Ali. I'm curious, what do you think about some of the sleep that she's having with how kind of in and out of consciousness
Mhm.
that she's
Yeah.
describing?
I mean, I can definitely relate to that myself because this is something that I would say that's a very common thing during like
Mhm.
common experience during insomnia because when our brain is hyper aroused, it is anxious, it is like full of worries around like, okay, what if I will not sleep, what will happen with my health, with my life, and so on, and a lot, especially if I see a lot of this kind of like worry in parents because like it is true, like when there is a child you need to take care of, sometimes it can interfere with sleep, so sometimes you need to attend to a child like during night and so on, and this is the sleep disruption, like this is a clear sleep disruption that no one is immune against, like it can happen to anyone, even like the best sleepers. So we need to understand that it is normal to be awake when we are taking care of someone. And then there is this part of like this kind of like different quality of the sleep. And I usually, in my words, like how I was usually explaining it is like sleep didn't feel like sleep. It's like it doesn't feel like that. And this was very scary for me. It was like very, I couldn't understand what is happening because on one hand it was like it felt like the time was passing and I feeling like I cannot remember details of the night, like when I was already like in the morning and I tried to kind of recall the night, I couldn't. And I was like, what I was doing whole night, like it feels like I was awake. And it was so, yeah. And this it does have the name, I believe. It's something that we'll usually like here on the channel, like Daniel and you, Michelle, like refer to hypersleep.
Mm-hmm.
This is kind of a state where like hyperarousal is so strong that it kind of like makes sleep seem so like so shallow. And I also find like connection to this kind of thing, what is called like paradoxical insomnia, or this kind of like sleep misperception state, sleep state misperception, or something like this, which is actually like it sounds a bit like weird, but in reality, like when I learned about that, it actually gave me more confidence because in reality we might feel that we are not sleeping, but our body is going through the all necessary stages. That means that our body will always get the required amount of sleep, and the fact that you're still like after a long time of having this kind of hypersleep and so on, but you're still managing to do some tasks, you might still feel somehow like tired or anything, but the fact that you are still able to do something already shows that the body got a necessary amount of sleep. And it is a matter of kind of like a matter of time and working with that hyperarousal for that feeling of sleep to go away. But in reality, like if we take like if she would be put in the lab and like they would measure her like stages and so on, and what would usually what happens is that when people like when in the labs they studied people with insomnia, they noticed that they actually like they slept much more than they actually reported. And
Yes.
the onset of their sleep was they could say like, oh, I was awake for I don't know like 2 hours before I fell asleep, and then on this machine it shows like it's like 30 minutes or something like that. So
Yeah.
and I think the good news is here is that you sleep more than you think. So there is,
Almost always.
yeah,
Mhm.
but I also know that this hyper sleep is not very pleasant state. That's for sure. And I totally it's worth validating your feelings around that. But I also want to say that, the fact that you still manage to do your things during the day, you're healthy, you're sane, is the proof that your body is getting the necessary amount of sleep. Now when we try to fight with that, like, okay, I have hyper sleep, I have this kind of like shallow sleep, not deep sleep, and what should I do about it? And we start doing actively something to get rid of that. It creates more of hyperarousal and therefore more of that hyper sleep. So
Mhm.
it's this kind of like another this paradox. And the way towards that, I think, is this kind of understanding first that you're safe, that the body is getting like the necessary amount of sleep, and being like open to that experience, like being okay with having for a while this kind of like this hyper sleep. And the moment when you become okay with that is the moment when the brain will feel safe. It will turn off all of that hyper vigilance and safety mechanisms, and this is when sleeps will again feel like sleep. You will feel again like that you're you feel like when you wake up, that you've been asleep. So that's my general thoughts on that.
Yeah. Yeah, no, absolutely. I don't have too much to add, because like that was beautifully summed up, and I just really wanted to reinforce to you, Joni, that yeah, super normal. And I have so many clients, if not almost all the clients I've worked with insomnia, will have a version of this, and it can look a little bit different. Some people have described it to me as their sleep feels trance-like, like not fully conscious, not fully not conscious, very shallow, like vivid, a lot of vivid dreams as well. That can be really common. And I know in my experience, I definitely experienced a lot of this type of hypersleep and a lot of vivid dreams. And I remember that it actually, it was scary at the time because I didn't understand that this was a normal part of a hyper aroused, sleep experience. And I also didn't understand why my dreams had become so vivid. And after learning that this was kind of part of what hyperarousal can do, this is one of many symptoms, it's normal, it's not permanent, all of these things, I was able to start reframing my hypersleep during my recovery process. Where if I were to have, let's say, a really vivid dream, normally my reaction to that would have been some sort of concern or feeling really uneasy about it, where I then started to reframe that intentionally as great, I slept. Because I'm, waking from a vivid dream, therefore I am waking up from sleep. And so even though it didn't feel like what I was hoping for in terms of sleep or deep sleep, all these things, I started to get more excited about my vivid dreams as opposed to being scared by them, or seeing them as some sort of really negative sign. So I think it can help reframe once we know that this is a normal part of hyperarousal that we can work on or that we can change over time. We can start reframing and seeing that, okay, maybe that trance-like state, maybe that vivid dream, okay, that's a sign that I was sleeping and it's okay. And kind of like what Ali was saying, going back to knowing like you're safe in that moment. And I think you said the phrase, can you be open to the experience? And I think that's a really big part about all of insomnia is it really starts with coming to this place of being open to experiencing all of the discomfort that we're going through, knowing that that is the starting point to recovering and being able to overcome it, which of course is difficult, but even knowing that it's important can help us open to the experience of that. So, did you have a lot of hypersleep as well, Ali, during your?
I did, and like what's different from like what you described for yourself? Like for me, I didn't have that vivid dream part, and for me, it was already. I wanted to have the dreams. I wanted to see dreams because for me, I was like I felt like seriously I was awake, and
Okay.
when I'm awake, I don't have dreams. And every time I had a dream, and then I could remember it. Sometimes I not always I could remember exactly that right after I become more aware, And then the moment I would say, oh yeah, there was a dream. I remember there was like some bizarre plot and so on. And I felt like a wave of relief, like, oh my God, I was dreaming. That's, so it was already for me was like a good sign, but I know many people get scared of those vivid dreams. So there's and I completely agree with you. It's all about like how you think of them. It can be, you can view them as a bad sign, but you can also view it as a good sign. And the good sign, actually, when you feel good about that experience, so that means that you're open to it and you're welcome it. This is usually like what helps you feel more safe, more peaceful, and this is when like sleep starts coming on its own.
Yeah, no, exactly. And that all of this is a normal experience to be having. Once our brain learns fear around not being able to sleep and we start to have a lot of hyperarousal symptoms, this type of hypersleep is one of several symptoms of hyperarousal that are very expected and normal, even though, yes, they're very, very uncomfortable to have. And of course, being open to the experience and starting to change how we are actually mentally and emotionally responding and showing up to the whole experience is kind of the big part of starting to change all of that. So, okay, let's move on to our next question. All right, so a final question is from Vanny, and there's kind of three questions. So I'm going to start and then we're going to pause along the way so that we can answer them separately. So she says, I have tried to befriend wakefulness, but still cannot sleep for the past month. Could you help me with some questions? The first question is, how do you spend the night when you feel very sleepy and tired, even yawning, but you just can't sleep? I tried reading a book, watching Netflix, or simply resting in bed, listening to music or meditation, or doing nothing. But I ended up feeling very lonely and sad. My heart beats fast to the point that I wake my husband up and cry. I know it's fear I need to let go, but how to get through the night when it's so quiet and there is nobody around you? So good question. Absolutely, and this is something that I hear all the time. And there's different, even within this question. I feel like there's different parts of it. And I think the first piece I want to talk about is this idea of feelings of loneliness or sadness coming to visit us at night, for lack of a better term, which is really common because often when we're up at night, we feel like we're alone, not only in our own households. I remember thinking I felt like I was the only one in the world who was awake at certain times of the night. And I used to peek out my windows of my house to see if I could see any other lights on and oftentimes I couldn't. And
Yeah.
it would just confirm, but it's like, of course, I'm only seeing so much of a neighborhood anyway. I remember this feeling of deep, deep loneliness and sadness very well. And I think part of it is when we start to feel that the intensity of loneliness and sadness, the instinct is to somehow get away from that and to not feel that because it's so uncomfortable. And we're only human, and that is the instinct. Let's get away from this horrible feeling, when really I think a lot of all of our feelings essentially are wanting to be felt. That's the main thing and the reason that they are coming up. And so often if we're starting to feel these things, but then we reach for the Netflix show or we reach for our phone or whatever it might be, we're avoiding feeling whatever is there, and then it stays with us so much longer is what we don't realize. And then we start like carrying it around throughout the rest of the night, maybe the next day, when really the most helpful thing is to know I'm feeling really lonely and sad, and can I allow myself to actually really feel lonely and sad right now? And this goes back to actually what Ali was saying in the previous question, opening to the whole experience. So when I hear that, I think, can you make space for whatever is coming up during the night? And in this case, it's loneliness and sadness. So can you create some space for that and have it be okay that you're feeling this way, and allow yourself to really feel it and be with yourself during that time, um, and even welcome in some of those feelings, since they really do just want that attention and to be felt. And oftentimes, if we're able to do that, then we don't carry them. We are able to release those emotions. So I'll pause there for a second and pass it over to Ali. What do you think about this first question from Vanny about?
You said it already so beautifully. I have like really nothing to add. It's so true. Yes, exactly. It's about allowing yourself to be sad if it comes naturally. And yeah, exactly. When people say that, okay, I'm trying to enjoy my night, I'm trying to do something that I but I don't feel like that joy, and that's that totally makes sense. Sometimes we aren't in the mood to do fun stuff when we obviously feel sad, we feel lonely, and this like part with the lights, I had like in one like in the when I was looking out of the window, and the building, there was like one particular flat, and I saw that there is like my insomnia body, because that window was like on, and when it was like 2 a.m. or something, and when it was like the light turned off, and I felt like even lonelier, because oh my
Yes,
god, my friend has left me. And
yes, I had that too. I would always look.
yeah, exactly. And yeah, I totally resonate, like it resonates, this kind of feeling of sadness. And I want to say that actually, I mean, the truth to be told, most of my nights when I was like whole nighters or something like this, most of my nights were filled with sadness
Oh yes,
and a
yep.
lot of crying. And
Hmm.
I believe that this was part of the journey, was a part of that recovery thing. Because to me, like, what means like sadness? It's kind of like, from evolutionary, like theory, or what emotions might mean, is that when we are sad, we stop trying, we stop doing anything. We kind of give up on pursuing our goal, which is like to make sleep happen. And we honestly, like, we don't know what to do. Things that we were doing before, we see that, okay, nothing works. I feel defeated. I feel like, okay, there is nothing I can do. And this is like, this sadness brings that. I would say this is one of the last stages before letting go of control, which is so much needed
Hmm.
during insomnia, because you really need to let go of that control. And I was meeting that sadness with, I created a lot of space for it. And I would say, especially the last periods of my recovery were full, like filled with sadness. I
Yeah.
felt like I was not really befriending wakefulness in the sense that, oh, I was cheering, like I was like doing, and sometimes I felt like sad, sometimes I feel like annoyed, and I let that kind of emotion be. And interestingly, it led me to, I had this kind of like kind of phrase that I was like, the phrase that describes my internal state in the moment when I was giving up on trying to sleep. It was like, this sucks, but whatever. This I hate this. I really hate this. I cannot do this. I cannot fix this. That's it. I'm gonna, I'm just gonna hang like in my living room on my bed. Doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. I cannot sleep. And this kind of like really like letting go of control. I cannot find better word. And this is something that led to the place where I just fell asleep, and I couldn't even remember how and what I did. So that was this kind of magic after it was happening. And this is why I feel like, exactly, giving space for the sadness to be is a really, really good strategy in my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely. And I also dealt with so much sadness, either a lot of fear or a lot of sadness. And it was when I started making space for it all and allowing and practicing what it felt like to feel those painful emotions and to stay with it and to feel and all of that. And that's a practice. We can kind of work with that and teach ourselves that. And and it did really help, like you were saying, Ali, it helps us to let go.
Yeah, and it invites, I would say, it invites this self-compassion and
Mm,
self.
yes.
You feel sad, you want to like just hug yourself and just like do this, like, and cry and so on. This is amazing. This is a place for give that love to yourself. And the self-kindness is like a huge part of the recovery process.
Huge.
So it's just the experience calls for that very helpful tool, what we call like kindness. It's just like we feel sad, and this is amazing place to this deploy that self-kindness and self-support.
Oh,
So
I
yeah.
agree. Can you show up to the sadness that's coming through without any judgment, with a loving space?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Totally.
absolutely. All right, let's move on to her second question. Okay, she says, two, you said insomnia will not cause health problems, but I feel that my body is weakened. It's feeling tired, drowsy the whole day. I have lots of energy and appetite. I can't eat well. I can't work. I lost weight and am feeling depressed. Be it due to the fear or the lack of sleep, these are all health issues showing that our body is not recharged. So, how do we deal with these health issues while waiting for sleep to come back? Okay, good question. And this is a very, very common question. And I thought it was interesting, Vanny, that at some point you even said, be it due to the fear or be it due to the sleeplessness, which is interesting that you kind of even intuitively went in that direction. And where I want to go with this is that I feel as though with insomnia, there's always essentially two separate layers, which is there's our original layer of pain or struggle, which is all of the stuff that is actually naturally showing up with our sleeplessness. So fatigue, exhaustion, headaches, what have you, we are going to feel differently when we're not sleeping, absolutely. But then there's a second layer, which is really our amplified pain or struggle. And that is something that shows up when we are trying to control or force or avoid our original pain, if that makes sense. So I kind of almost see these two layers sitting on top of each other. And when we're in the insomnia struggle, all we know is that we are struggling deeply and we don't have a sense for these two layers or how big the first one is versus the second one. How big is our original pain versus that amplified pain that is coming as a result of how we're actually responding to the whole experience. And what most people, if not all people, find along this recovery process is that as they start to control and force less, as they start to be willing to accept and experience the original pain, that second layer of that amplified pain starts to disappear. And we start to see that so much of the pain and discomfort was actually coming from that second layer. And not just the second layer, but the fact that it's adding, right? So you're now creating this huge,
Yeah,
huge thing. So
multiply.
you're really, really decreasing it. And I know that one of the experiences I had with my own process was really being quite shocked as to how significantly large my amplified pain was. So how much struggle was, happening because I was avoiding and not willing to experience my insomnia at all. And how much when I started to step out of the struggle, which is a phrase, by the way, I stole from you, Ali, step out of the struggle. Um, how much I noticed that things like, oh, okay, I still have a headache from not sleeping, but it's not nearly as bad. I can actually go about my day with this headache. I don't have to stop everything and lay down like I used to. And the level of fatigue and exhaustion and all these sort of things, all of the physical stuff we feel in our bodies, can really be quite influenced when we start to go on this journey of accepting being open to this experience, because we get rid of all of that added stuff, and we don't even know we're adding it. We don't realize until we start to step out of it and take
Yeah.
it away, and then it becomes obvious. It is something I feel only obvious in hindsight. So
Yeah.
did you have that experience too? What do you think about this one?
Exactly, and I also had like health concerns, like about because I was reading like, okay, there is no, also was reading like, yeah, like that insomnia cannot, cause the la, but then I was feeling that, I felt headache, I felt all this kind of like, and of course, like, it's always good idea to check with the doctor and everything. It's like really no, whenever there is like a health concern, it's like that's the common sense to do. But I completely agree with you that this kind of like fighting with that creates this extra layer of fatigue, and which usually, like what Daniel usually calls like this emotional fatigue. It's not like physical fatigue, because if you think of that, like I don't think that there is that much connection between the actual, like, lack of sleep or less sleep, and how we feel the next day. I mean, of course, there's like, you would feel like more sleepy, or you might have like some headache or something like that. But if we look at people who don't have insomnia, but they also sleep less for whatever reason, let's say students who are partying whole night, who are hanging out and like late night and then have to wake up early and so on and so on, and they don't really have that kind of that extra layer, that the one which you were talking about, and they can handle the next day. I mean, of course there's fatigue, there's everything, but there's no so much struggle around it. So I also like believe that big part of that fatigue comes from that battle, from that fight with our sleep and trying to for sleep. So and now the question is like, okay, what shall we do, like, with that? Well, like, first, I think it's good to just be aware that sometimes this fatigue, all those like emotions like this, or physical sensations that come after the night of less sleep also come from that battle with sleep. So just realize, and this is like normal response, like our body feels like drained emotionally and physically from all that struggle, and let this create space for it, for this experience. It's totally normal to feel that way. And now how we can treat ourselves like during that time, I mean, like how we approach this, because should we push through, or maybe we should actually dial down on that and maybe actually provide support. Maybe this is something that you would, like in the first question, the first like a person who was asking like about naps. It's also like, okay, it can create a lot of fatigue. Maybe if you feel like you just want to lie down and rest, maybe this is something that you can also support yourself like this during the tough days. So creating as much comfort as possible for yourself on those tough days, because they are tough, and there is like, we are not going to say that it's not. It is. For me, it was like, I really, I hated the days after.
Oh, very hard.
Yeah, and I totally feel you, and I would say that asking yourself, what is it that I can do for myself during these tough days? How can I support myself? And sometimes it might be, okay, it might be about something, do like go for a walk or eat tasty food and so on. But sometimes it could be about allowing yourself not to do something, giving yourself permission. Like if you say like, oh my God, I should do this. And you just say, you know what, maybe you don't have to do this, like, for example, I should, whatever, like I should just show up and push through and exercise, let's say, if that's the strategy they use. And now you feel like you're really drained and like energy wise, and then, you don't have any mood for running. Then maybe, how about if you allow yourself just not to run, just create a cheat day, like this kind of approach that creates less pressure on yourself is usually something that can help us feel better during those tough days, just a little bit better, and not even looking like how it will affect sleep.
Yeah.
It's a totally different issue right now, because now it's about how to create comfort right now in that very moment when you feel tired. So yeah,
Path of least resistance.
path of least resistance, always. That's always the best.
That should be the title of this episode, Path of
Yes.
Least Resistance. All right, let's go to her final question here, third part. You say medications do not make us sleep. It is still our body making the sleep itself. Does that mean medication is not bad after all? Example, they do not give fake sleep and cause memory loss. My doctor thinks I worry a lot about sleep and it gives me arousal. She prescribed fluvoxamine to help with anxiety, and also low dose lorazepam as sleeping pills when necessary. The lorazepam is helping me to sleep and carry on daily activities, but I don't want to take it long term. But if I stop now, it will go back to the vicious cycle of not being able to sleep and anxiety, depression, etc. The thought of not taking it brings back fear. Do you have any suggestions to overcome this? Hope to hear from you soon. Many thanks in advance. Okay. So we usually do get a lot of kind of medication related question. So I always like to start by saying that nothing here is medical advice when it comes to your medications. Always check in with your doctor. So we're just going to touch on some concepts that can be helpful, but always go back to your doctor when you make decisions around your medications. So the first thing that you had said was, does this mean medications aren't bad? Yes, they're not bad. And in fact, lots of people that we work with are taking various different types of medications along their insomnia recovery journey, and it is in no way impeding them to recover from their insomnia at all. And a lot of the time, similar to the previous question from Tom about napping, it's our perception that can come in and create a lot of problems and a lot of inner stress, a lot of inner conflict around things like medications, because we start to tell ourselves, this is bad and I shouldn't be taking this. When really that is, again, just a perception that we're telling ourselves that's not factual in any way. And so a lot of the times we like to encourage people to challenge that perception if it's there. And, can you even replace it with viewing the medication that you're on similar as to how you would view taking a nutritional supplement in the morning? Because if we take nutritional supplements, most of us will actually feel pretty good about ourselves. We see that as taking care of ourselves, we feel good. And if we can start to use that perception and shift it over to whatever medication we might be taking, it can actually really help relieve some of the inner stress that we feel about it and remove some of the judgment that we have with ourselves, which isn't helpful because, as you know from listening to this session, that path of least resistance, being open to the experience, all of these concepts, it's really the same with medication, right? If you're going to be taking medication, kind of embrace that medication and know that it's not one or the other. You don't have to stop taking all of your medication in order to start to recover from insomnia. And you can start working on the fear and anxiety part of this, whether you're on medication or not. And the first step is always education, which is great that you're here and on this channel. That's always a great starting point. So, Ali, what do you think of this question and about
I totally agree with you that
role and
I mean I was prescribed medication, but it was I was prescribed this hypnotic, the sleep aid, but then also was prescribed antidepressants. But the antidepressant I was not taking. Actually, I didn't take them because for some reason, like personally for me, I wanted to be like I didn't want to rely on something,
yeah,
and I think this is like helped like in a way that I didn't have to get off them later on. But I was taking this kind of like the sleeping pills, like but I was taking them sporadically. So I was not like, it was not regular. And this is also somehow my doctor was not even like protesting much. She was like, yeah, if you don't, just take a pill and whatever, whenever you feel like. So but in terms of like this, whether they're bad or not, I would say the fact that they've been used for a very long time, if there will be some very like something really serious like side effect, like really something this like they can break something, then they probably would already be kind of like detected and eliminated, or like for forbidden and so on. So I assume that we can talk about their safety, but at the same time, that kind of like well, I believe that well, sleep is a function of the body that doesn't need any assistance because nothing else can create it. So it is not the pill that makes us sleep. It is like what kind of like what follows next when we take the pill. Because for us, for me, like at least like when I was taking the pill, for me it was like a safety net. I was like, okay, I take it, that thing is like taken care of. So I was just like letting the pill to take care of my sleep, but in reality it was not the pill that was taking care of my sleep, but it was actually me not trying to do anything else. So and I know that when we begin to use it like more regularly, it can create also this kind of psychological like dependence on it, where
absolutely.
we feel like, okay, then without it I cannot sleep. And and it can make us feel that yes, that like sleeping pills, like something that have that effect, that they put us to sleep, but in reality it is not, is our belief in that. Of course there's like sedative effect, so that it kind of calms us down and so on. But I would say, because insomnia is based on fear and there is no pill against fear,
Good point.
basically yes,
We should
there's
create one.
no pill against insomnia, like logically, because like fear is like one of our emotions, and it's really, it would not be probably not a good idea to get rid of one of our emotions, like one of our basic survival emotions. So yeah, but again, as you said, there is no really like contradiction in terms of like if you feel that this is the right path for you, and the doctor like you agree with doctor and so on, there's no problem in keep learning about the insomnia and so on, and applying all this like principles, while also using like some sleeping aid. But this time you will be already understanding that it is your it is your body that does the work, not the pill. And then you can decide whether you want to continue and or not. And many people, like, I mean, some people, they choose to just keep keep using pills, and but while they also realize that that their body is like is what does the job. So as long as there's no internal conflict, either whatever you choose is the right choice, I guess.
I love that you said there's no pill for anxiety and fear. Very true. Very true. And that's why, just like you, I was encouraging you, Vanny, to kind of keep going, keep learning, because you can start to learn about the anxiety and fear and support yourself in that way, whether or not you're on medication or not. So going back to the path of least resistance.
It all comes down to that, yeah.
It all comes down to that, exactly. All right, well, that's it for today, everyone. I hope you're doing well, and thank you again, Ali, for being here today.
It was pleasure.
Well, we'll see you next time, everyone. Take care.